Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we'll make a start then. So just do brief introductions, especially for those of you that haven't been part of any of our sessions before. So I'm Vicky, and Jo will introduce herself in a moment from the Good Practice Mentor team. And we have been around now, we're in our third year of funding, but ultimately our programme has come from the learning and legacy of the Aging Better programme, which was around for several years, working with older people to reduce loneliness and isolation amongst people aged 50 and over. And the working with approach, the co-production approach was at the kind of core of everything that we did within that programme. And a lot of our work as well was around how we reach, engage and involve people to have more meaningful engagement and to really kind of gain insight, which is very much Jo's area of specialism. So she'll be leading most of this session today around the kind of street outreach approach and how a more informal approach to reaching, finding and engaging people is the way forward alongside other more traditional methods. So my area is co-production, the working with approach, and I'm based out of Sheffield. And Jo, over to you from Age UK Camden.
Yeah. Hello everyone, I'm Jo. I'm based at Age UK Camden because they were my host organisation during our lottery community funding for the Aging Better programme. And I just wanted to add, really, as Vicky was saying, we've been part of this Good Practice Mentor team for the last 3 years. So during that time, we've been working with a whole host of different groups, organisations all across the country. So our expertise has continued to grow, and it's not now only relevant to people aged 50 plus. It's helped organisations to reach and engage people of all age. So that's a bit about that. You might have come across our Good Practice Mentor colleague, Jessica, based at Leeds Older People's Forum. And her expertise, well, she's got quite a few of them actually, but certainly around things like the psychology of loneliness and isolation, how to make people really welcome and embed them in your activity, your service and your offer. And we've also got our colleague Jenny, based at South Yorkshire Housing Association as well, and other associate partners. So that's just a whirlwind tour really of who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. And it's great, isn't it, to see the number of stakeholders that we're working with expand all the time. And as we were saying just now, we're learning all of the time about what people really need and how we can really adapt our experience and learning to meet the needs of all of those different kind of stakeholder groups. So you can get access to more information through these slides. We will include some links to further reading and background information if you're interested in finding out more. We do love to share resources as well. So you'll get all sorts of information after this session and a copy of the slides and a recording of the sessions available via YouTube as well. So today then, we are very much focusing on these areas here, where we're going to be looking at how we can really reach and engage the people that we really would like to meet and share some of our approaches with you. So first and foremost, an intro to some of the different informal conversational strategies that will help you to engage the people that you're less likely to know about, or they're less likely to know about you, or actually participate in formal groups, activities, services and support. You might have an idea about them, but you might be finding it difficult to actually reach those people and really kind of find out, as Lucy was saying, what they feel and think and need. So we're talking about we will be talking about, street outreach as an effective tool to find, approach and engage with the people that you do want to reach. And Jo will share lots of insight around street outreach as a tool. And then we'll give you a whistle-stop tour around a very particular approach that we work with called SOSAR for short. So it's basically street outreach as a tool for social action research. So don't worry if that feels a little bit complex right now. We'll break that down for you and really explain what that means in practice. And we've got some examples to share as to how this particular approach has been helpful for different organisations and communities that we've worked with to help them to really engage with the people that they don't usually get to meet, and what that actually tells them about what's needed and what's missing. We'll also be able to give you a little bit of insight into how SOSAR might help you, or that particular approach might help you to engage with your seldom heard voices within your communities. And we'll just tell you a little bit about what we do as a follow-up so that you can tap into additional support should you wish to. Anything to add to that, Jo?
No, I think there's quite a lot happening in this session, and I think what we ask you to bear in mind all the way through is this is really focusing on the people that we don't meet or engage, and often we think about those groups as being minorities, but often we consult with the people we know, and often they can appear on paper large groups, a few hundred people, but if you put that into the context of the wider population, often we are speaking to the same people over and over again, and what they're sharing with us, their voice, is the thing that often kind of perpetuates more of the same and what we're doing. So hopefully today, just a completely different way of opening that door to thinking about things differently.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So we're going to dive straight in and get some information from yourselves in terms of what it is that you would like to know and why you don't currently meet the people that you would like to meet in order to find that out. So what stops you from meeting those people that Jo's just been talking about, and actually finding things out. And we are going to use our usual Mentimeter interactive way of finding information out from you. If you haven't used it before, you haven't been in a workshop with us before, we do tend to use this quite a lot. So you can use your smartphone to get access to this, or you can open up an additional tab on your PC or laptop and type in www.menti.com. And that will come to a web page, and it will ask you for a code. And the code is up on the screen. And Jo, are you all right to pop that code into the chat as well, just so we don't lose it? Because I'm going to share the questions with you in a minute so we can see on screen what people are feeding in live. If you have problems with the tech, you can't get on, getting frustrated, just use the chat function and answer the questions in there, and we will bring those answers in as well. So we won't miss you out in any way. But this is just a lovely way of getting everybody's answers in one place, and we can see them as they're coming in. So there'll be 2 questions that you'll be guided to answer. And this is all around really being able to explore the bigger picture a little bit, and what do you want to know the most and why you currently don't know it, by answering these 2 questions. So what are the things that you'd most like to know from the people that you are not currently meeting, and what stops you from meeting them and finding things out? So I'm just going to stop sharing there and pop this up on the screen for you.
And while you're doing that, Vicky, I'll just say welcome to Karen and Candice. Great to have you with us in the session. Hello.
Hello, thank you.
So it'll just take me a little while to find my mentee. As always, I have these things ready and then they always disappear when I go to find them. It's usual. Here we go. You should be able to answer the first question now. I can see that people are in there. And let me just present that for you. Okay, so things are starting to come in live. Brilliant. What are the things you'd most like to know from the people you aren't yet meeting?
Yep, and this is always a fascinating question for us as well. And whenever we ask people these questions, often people share quite similar things, and we find ourselves not knowing because we're not able to engage people. So we tend to have to kind of assume perhaps what people might need. And, you know, sometimes the service comes first, so we anticipate need. But yeah, this is great. So do people know what's happening locally? What local issues are important to them? How can the town council support them? How can the town council help? Understanding what it's like for people to live in their area, what needs are not being met, so where are the gaps? And what would they like the parish council to deliver, and how do they prefer to interact? So already there's lots of gaps, isn't there? So we don't know, and we're not guessing, because you know the choices we make are informed on what we know and our experience, but there's a gap there. So it's a situation there where we do our best to kind of fill that and anticipate need.
Yeah, brilliant. And it's also thinking about the people that you aren't yet meeting, isn't it? So you might know some of that stuff already from the people that you usually meet. And you might also need to go dig a little bit deeper with them as well to be able to really truly understand what that means to them. But yeah, there's a whole range of people out there that you've not even been able to ask these questions to. So yeah, these are the key things that you'd like to ask them. Fab. I'll move us on to the next one. So what stops you from meeting them and finding the things out that you'd really like to know? What's happening to prevent you from doing that? I've not missed anything in the chat, have I, Jo?
No, we haven't. I think everyone's pondering. It's quite a tricky question, this, isn't it? Because it can be quite a complex answer as well. So already we've got the people that are not visible, so you're not meeting them in your services and support, so they're not represented there, and they might not be easily accessible to you. So knowing where they are, not knowing how to reach them exactly.
Yeah, and that's, you know, not knowing how on earth can we get to these people that we really want to get to. You know, it's it can feel like a difficult thing, can't it? Not having a good enough understanding of where people with priority needs are. Yeah, similar there. So going beyond the usual suspects. Yeah, understanding of where people with the priority needs are. Yeah, absolutely.
And also as well, we've got here around town councils cover huge populations, which is difficult. There's, you know, limited resource. How can you be everywhere? And also you've got this very complex mix, haven't you? So you might have rural communities, places that don't have community infrastructure, as in shops and community centres or places where people might come together in those settings. So yes, and I think those two questions are always a great place to start, because it enables you to straight away understand who might be our priority people that we really want to meet. What are some of the barriers? We might not be able to address all of the barriers in one go, but we might be able to kind of target our time and resources and say, let's start here and let's focus there.
Yeah, and there'll be a huge range of reasons why people aren't visible, which we will explore a little bit. And as you quite rightly said, some people are more dispersed because they're not in the kind of areas where there is, usual access to the places that they might hang out, or the bumping places, as we like to call them. In more dispersed areas, there might not be as many bumping spaces that are, I suppose, as obvious. Great. Okay, so good starting point just to get us thinking about things, and what you'd like to know and why you're not yet finding this out. I'm just going to go back to the slides for a second. And we are going to move into when it does its thing. There we go. Reaching, engaging, and involving people. And we're going to talk a bit now about how or why this needs to look different if we're able to find the people that we really want to meet and ask the questions that we really want to ask, and how we can turn things around to be able to make that more accessible. So I am going to hand over to Jo now. I was going to give you some insights into this, and we'll take it from there.
Brilliant. So if you joined me in workshop 1, where we explored this in more depth, as an outreach practitioner, my experience is all about, I just go out into the community and proactively find and engage people where they are. So I'm not waiting for them to come to me. They're not people who have to be referred or access a service or support. It's very direct engagement. And as soon as I started doing this work, and it doesn't matter where I've done it in the country, when you speak to people, you find one of the biggest barriers to engaging with us is people often go, oh, it's not for me. And when you kind of delve a bit further into that, you find one of the biggest barriers to engagement is people's kind of preconceptions about who and what your offer is for. Could be who and what the town council is and who it's for and what it does. People don't necessarily have that information, so they tend to fill in the gaps themselves. So this is just kind of some headlines of really common thinking that people have that makes them just go, oh, no, it's not for me. I'm not applying to that survey. I'm not going to that meeting. I'm not going to meet that person because I don't think any of that is aimed or for me. So as we've mentioned, people will have an idea about the town council and what you do. They might not know what you do at all. So for them, they might go, oh, well, they're there for the people who really need it, the people who need it more than me. So it's always something, a service is for somebody else. Often as well, when we try and reach the people in most need, we tend to talk quite a lot about the vulnerability. We talk about people on low incomes. We might talk about people with health inequalities. We might talk about loneliness, isolation. And often by doing that, we almost require people to self-identify as vulnerable. So what's here is for those people who need it more than me. It's for vulnerable people. Maybe I don't perceive myself in that way, or I think it's for people who need it more. I think another really big barrier is often when you meet people, say you're doing something like a town council meeting, you're inviting people along, there's going to be so many of your residents whose life or cultural experience has never involved going along to a meeting or a group or an activity. So for some people, it might be not part of their lived experience, something they've never done, so they can't see themselves in that situation. Or it could be for somebody within their cultural experience, what you're inviting people to come to do doesn't mean anything. So the example I always give here is a coffee morning, because we all think we know what it is, but ask people and they'll all have their own interpretation and their own idea. And for some people, coffee morning doesn't mean anything in their culture. They don't know what to expect or what to happen. Another barrier as well, I think, is often people that I meet and engage with are very suspicious or distrustful of formal institutions and systems. So I might not want people to know my business, or, you know, it's people are trying to do something to me, or I don't want to be involved in that. Again, people filling in the blanks. Lots of people, once they become really isolated, their expectations about their lives and their ability to impact and influence things can really, really shrink down. So people just think nothing can change, there's no point, it's just the way it is. We know as well, if people have tried to engage with somebody before, might not necessarily be us, maybe it's been with another organisation or type of group, and that did not go well. They did not have a positive experience. Well, there's no point. They're less likely to engage with somebody else. They've just been put off. Throw into that mix all of the practical barriers we all know about. So things like literacy issues. I'm constantly surprised at how much literacy issues is a real barrier out in the community, language barriers, health and mobility, and also this idea of social commitment and ask. So we often invite people to come and talk to us, come and share their views, come and make friends, come and socialize. We really stress that kind of social interaction. But if you're an isolated person or a marginal person, or you're just not sure, it's often that kind of stressing of the social connection is the thing that people find daunting. So they worry about having to make a commitment to do something, to talk to somebody, to engage in a certain way. So these are kind of real common preconceptions and barriers. Next slide, please, Vicky. So as a result of all those preconceptions, people filling in the gaps themselves, the reality is that most of the people that we really want to meet and engage for are just not thinking about us. They're not looking for us. They're not going, oh, I wonder what my town council is doing and how I can get involved. You're not on their radar. And what I've also discovered is for those people as well, they're less likely to seek out information. So I've certainly spent lots of time putting information up in libraries, on notice boards, thinking people will find it. And then I've met people who've said, I don't read notice boards because none of that is for me. That's about somebody or something else. And then a lot of the barriers there, those preconceptions, are just reinforced and exacerbated by the digital divide. So much information is now online, or you have to access it online. Lots of people just don't have those skills or those opportunities. Going back again to how we invite people to engage with us, often the language, the images, the comms we use to promote those offers just perpetuate and reinforce people's barriers. So you can have a lovely event you're inviting people to with a picture of people on it. If those people don't look like you, maybe they've got grey hair and you think, oh, it's for those older people, it's not for me. So tiny things can kind of trigger this thinking. And the other barrier we have is often the way that we try and capture feedback is through those formal mechanisms, which are great. So things like the survey, the focus group, the meeting, because they are important, because they do capture some voices. But for some people in our community, the formality of that doesn't speak to them. It's not something they feel comfortable to engage in. So those kind of common barriers and thinking is something that we really need to look at, how we can move through those if we really want to do that engagement work. Next slide, please, Vicky. So when it comes to finding and engaging, I call them the people not looking for you, because that's, I think, really sums up the people that we seldom hear from. This is just kind of a very quick overview of the quick wins of doing that. So I've talked a bit about comms being a barrier. If you've got good comms, that doesn't reinforce all those barriers and that thinking. Go back to the recording of session 1 if you'd like to know more. Once you've got good comms, that speaks to people and resonates with them. For some people who are just not looking or thinking about you, if you can get that comms in the places where people will come across it, it's enough to trigger action. So, oh, didn't know about that. That sounds good. I'm going to engage. The ones we're really focusing on today are the people not looking for us, but maybe they're filling in lots of gaps. They've got lots of preconceptions about the town council, what they do, who they are, how I can influence or inform. For those people, the thing that makes the difference is good comms and a conversation, so street outreach. We'll explore that today. And then I think the people who are often the most hardest to find and engage, the people who are hidden behind their doors, so the people not looking for us, might have barriers and preconceptions, but they're not out in the community or they're in a really rural setting. The thing that can make the difference there is good comms, door knocking, and the conversational nudge. So this just kind of gives you some options to explore. Next slide, please, Vicky. So we're thinking now about those people out in the community, not looking for us, preconceptions about meetings, surveys, groups, activities, all of those things, who and what you're about, who and what you're for. If you do the hard work of going to people, but then you fall back on talking about things in a formal way, so in a service way, and I know in your session last time with Vicky and Jenny, you explored some of the language around that about communicating what you're doing. So if I go up to somebody and then I say, oh, would you like to come to this meeting? If I'm using that word, I might be speaking to somebody who's never been to a meeting or thinks meetings aren't for them. So for me as an outreach practitioner, the way I'm going to engage people needs to feel much less formal. And the real gold dust in this is the informal feeling conversations that we have with people. And often we kind of underestimate how valuable they are. So next slide, please, Vicky. So you might call these everyday conversations. You might call these informal conversations. What we know, there's been quite a lot of research around loneliness and isolation. And one of the things that can have the biggest impact upon people's well-being and how they feel about where they live is, are they able to say hello to neighbours? You know, if they go to the bus, is there someone to chat to? They go to their local shop, do they know the person behind the counter? And these are kind of categorised in research times as weak social ties or connections. So they're not friends. It's not necessarily a formal relationship, but I walk down the street, somebody says hello to me, and that makes me feel connected to where I live. It makes me feel less isolated. And we know that even a very short chit-chat conversation, just somebody saying hello, a few minutes of conversation, means that people feel seen and heard. It gives them permission to chat to other people, the confidence to do that. It can lessen those anxieties around social risk about going somewhere and having to chat to people. Research has shown it gives people a psychological and a well-being boost. I just feel better because I've spoken to somebody today. Often as well, it can just be a valuable social encounter for someone who's not having many of those. From our point of view and the work that you're doing, those kind of moments of human-to-human engagement and interaction build trust and rapport. You become a person rather than a role or a job, and that can have a really good impact on engagement. And whenever I find, when I speak to people, and I do this constantly wherever I am, you find that when you chat to people, that's when you find out and start to fill in those gaps about what is people's experience of living here, what's important to them. You capture lots of insight in less formal ways. And also as well, it's a real opportunity to do that nudge, to get somebody to come along to something, to help somebody to think about a possibility that's just not been on their radar. So those everyday conversations, those moments of chit chat absolutely matter. So next slide, please, Vicky. So what we'd like to do now is open out to all of you to think about those kind of conversations you have yourself. So I've called it on this slide a light touch conversation. So you're not providing information or advice. It could be the kind of conversation you have when, you know, as part of your day-to-day life, you're at the bus stop, you're in the supermarket, you're walking your dog. Have a think about where and when do you have those conversations, but most importantly, what do they feel like when you're just having a chat with somebody you don't really know, no personal information exchange, just talking about the weather, talking about the bus, talking about your dog, the nature of those. Has anybody got anything that they would like to share?
We've got something in the chat, some thoughts from Karen around how to maximise time and effort as a town councillor. And it strikes me that this is achievable if councils have community builders or similar, I guess, going out, having those light touch conversations. As several of our councillors are working and not necessarily locally, so they might not actually be in that particular community setting.
Yes, that's great feedback. Thank you, Karen. So anybody here, you're at the bus stop, somebody else is there, you're waiting a while and you end up having a chit chat. What does that feel like? What are the sorts of things that you might talk about? Anybody got any thoughts?
I suppose it's just the everyday normal. You always start with the sort of informal. It's always the weather, isn't it, that starts off a conversation, and then it can go into something a little bit more in depth once you've kind of got through that very general chit chat. And I think that's, you know, that is reflected in some of the things that councillors have said to me is, you know, it's often as they are out at the shop that somebody will stop them and talk to them. And then that's when I always wonder how they build on that conversation and then feed it back to the rest of the council. And so it's not making that conversation too formal, because often it is about, you know, parking and those kind of, it's again that sort of understanding of what the councillors can do and what their role is, but it often starts with quite general and friendly chat, I suppose, and it's then how do you lead that into something that is a bit more meaningful, I suppose, is, you know, what you take from it.
I think it can start from something that you've got in common there and then. So if you're waiting at the bus stop, you're both waiting at the bus stop. If you're waiting for your child, you know, and they're running late or whatever, it's a shared kind of experience that you're having. And I think you could start on that. Do you know what I'm trying to say? If there's a long queue in the supermarket, you might start, oh, you know, complaining or whatever, and it's just that shared experience at that time.
Absolutely. And I think the nature of the conversations is they tend not to be personal. You're not telling somebody your name, address, or telephone number, are you, when you're having the chat at the bus stop there? It's quite informal, it's very relaxed, and it feels very easy for people to have. And I think that style of conversation can open the door to kind of building rapport. And as you were saying, Candice and Lucy, you can then kind of develop from that. So yeah, it's just a really nice point for reflection, because you might be out and you might meet somebody and you think, I'd really like to talk to or engage that person. And the way into starting that is to go through the light touch. So I'm not going to come up to you and deliver a survey to you or ask you lots of personal questions. Where do you live? You know, who do you live with? All of those things. I might talk about the weather or you know, the place or the thing that you have in common. So it's just being aware, I think, of valuing that, and we'll explore in this session how you can take that further. So that's great, thank you. And we'll just go on to the next slide.
I was just wondering as well, so before we do that, with regards to Karen's sort of insight there, how we might look to bridge the gap between making sure that those sort of light touch conversations can be fed through, and there can be some connection there in terms of, you know, particularly if councillors aren't out and about in their local communities because they're working elsewhere. I just wondered if you had any thoughts around that, Karen.
One of the things that I can share, and we'll touch on a little bit when we look at the SOSAR, is how you can collect informal data very fast and quickly and anonymously from these types of conversations about who you're meeting and what are the things coming up in conversation, because often it's kind of anecdotal, so you can all say, oh yeah, we're having lots of conversations, but can you really say exactly who we spoke to? What are the topics and things coming up this month? And that's something as an outreach practitioner that I had to do for my funder for the lottery. So again, that's something that, you know, we can share outside of the session to help you make your own tool.
Does that kind of land for you okay, Karen? Does that kind of speak to your insights in the chat?
Not really. I
No.
don't think there's an appreciation of, if you've got a community builder, it's somebody's full-time job. They have lots of scope for being imaginative and creative. I think for town councillors, because I don't know what the research says, but I imagine that the people that strike up informal conversations are people like us. Either waiting for the bus, or have got children, or from the same ethnic group, or maybe the same gender. So I think there's something, I think there needs to be a focus on the role of town councillors. I think it's different if you're a county councillor or a district councillor, but town councillors, as I am, are volunteers, may be working full time, and therefore some thoughts on how you maximise. So there might be the intent, and I've done a lot of community engagement with particular groups in the past, about how town councillors can be helped maybe through some data-driven insights about their communities. So they're hanging around to have informal conversations in the right places, you know, not if they're shopping at Waitrose, for instance, which is big in Malvern. Although I got called woke yesterday in Waitrose, so that didn't go well.
Oh dear.
When I tried to strike up an informal conversation. So I think a better appreciation of that is kind of needed in this session. Or maybe what we should be doing is proposing and we have thought about this. I mean, I don't know if you're whether you're volunteer good practice mentors or whether you're paid, but actually some paid posts. So there's some infrastructure that's supporting it, because I don't think it's the sort of stuff we can ask our town clerk and staff to do. There's clearly stuff we can do about our comms, and there is stuff that we can all do informally. But I think the question is, how do you make the most of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, I suppose, what your kind of comment was there. So I guess for us, it's about how we can link up the SOSAR, Joe, in terms of feeding that data in, isn't it? And in the right way, so it informs the way forward.
And I think, Karen, later on we'll be talking about really how we can help people to focus in on where to go and have those conversations, because you know, you can go to, as you said, your Waitrose, but you're going to meet a certain demographic there, aren't you? So it's all of that we can support. But thank you for sharing.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Karen. Sorry
for myself. Hi. As a parish councillor in a small parish, 3,000 people, I don't get into conversations about parish council business because nobody's particularly interested in it. And I don't really get into sort of informal conversations because I don't go to school gates or shopping or whatever. So it does present an initial barrier to think of opportunities for like touch conversations.
Yeah.
Come around my way too much. I'm not too sure whether it's being a man, it makes a difference as well. But possibly not. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, thanks, John. And again, we'll look at different ideas and different ways that we might create opportunities for those conversations to occur. So thank you. Brilliant.
Right. So these are just a few examples really about if you've gone to the place or you're meeting people and you're having those conversations of not falling back into kind of formal language and jargon. So these are just some examples. And what I always say to people is just say it like it is on the tin rather than using the formal way. So instead of feedback, it's chatting to people. Instead of questionnaire, you're asking people what they think. Instead of a survey, it could be we're talking to people about. Instead of inviting people to socialise, you might say meeting other local people. Instead of talking about activities in group, talking about how people spend their time, things they can drop into, drop by, rather than a meeting or a community. You might talk about, come meet your neighbours, we're listening to each other or chatting or talking. So there's just something there for you to think about around how you pitch and present those engagement opportunities and a bit of the language that you're using. So that could be in your comms, could be in your conversation, it could be with people that you're speaking to in other ways. And for me, the big thing that always brought any interaction to a close is if I use the words older person. So I'm funded by the lottery to meet and engage people aged 50 plus. If I said, older people, people never thought I was talking about them. They always thought I was talking about somebody much older. So it's just little ways where the kind of language that we often use can then break that engagement as well. So language really does matter too. Next slide, please.
We're back into another Menti.
We are.
So I guess it's finding space now to think about some of the barriers that you've already kind of talked about or touched on, and some of the things that might stop you from being less formal, and how you might change that around a little bit. So what would help you specifically to have those less formal interactions and more informal conversations with the people in your communities, or to get access to those people in some way. So we're going to go on to Menti again for that. So if you just go back to www.menti.com, hopefully you should still have that open, and it's the same code as before, which is in the chat for you. And let's just see what you think and what ideas you've got to share around this. And I'll reshare the presentation with you. And just bear with me because I might just need to move it on before you can get to it as well. Here we go. Can you get to the question now, or is it still?
I think it's not on present. Oh, yeah, I think it just needs to move on to the next. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Thank you. So what would help you to be less formal and more informal in your conversations and interactions?
So if it helps, again, going back to that focused, the people who might not ordinarily engage or access group services come to your meetings. So for me, a lot of the time it was men who less likely to come and engage or interact, but I would go and meet them, and I'd need to be able to initiate conversations, build rapport. So it could be the same, or it could be other groups or individuals. So I love that example as well, this idea of matching their language. So mirroring what people are doing. We have got, we've got surveys are efficient, but building capacity to go out to meet people as well. Really valuable, because you're going to be meeting different people than the people who are responding to your survey. The knowledge of the local areas and places where people go, so where they move around in their community. So if I want to go and find them, I need to know where those places are.
And we'll be talking about that a little bit later on in the session, around doing a community asset map, which will very much help to steer that for you.
Yep, and we've also got here about getting all councillors on board to spread the load. And again, I think it's not necessarily always about doing extra things, but it's recognizing that when you do come across people, it's always going to be an opportunity. So it's how, give people the confidence to initiate and have those conversations, and think about building rapport, but how they can listen and learn from people as well.
I think that's it, isn't it? The more informal approach is very much about embedding it into what you're already doing, or the opportunities that already present themselves, rather than creating different ones or new ones. Anything else? I can stop the Menti there if you just want to talk to us as well. That's always good to hear you sort of share your ideas. You can always add those in. Anything else that you wanted to add? Or anything that would support you personally, you think, to be able to have those interactions? Okay, food for thought. We'll move through.
Great. So if you want to know more about the informal conversational strategies, the how to do it and approach it, and some top tips, some practical top tips, we have a toolkit. The link to this will be on your slide. So lots of practical how to go about it, what works in approaching and engaging people in those situations. So that's there as a resource to explore. Brilliant, thanks, Vicky. So we're now going to move on to talk about street outreach in practice. So when I say street outreach, I mean thinking about who are the people that I want to meet, where do they move around the community? I'm going to go there, and I'm going to proactively approach and engage them in conversation using those informal conversational skills. So next slide, please, Vicky. So why this really works. It's very quick and immediate. People are there, you're just going to them. Immediately means that you can just kind of find those people that we're not hearing from, the people we often think of as harder to reach. They might not be as part of that organisation or community group, but they're out there. So by going to them, I can find them. Also going back to this idea of lots of people who are not actively looking for you. So often I'll refer to these as people who are pre-contemplation. So I'm not looking for something, I'm not thinking about something. So that seed hasn't been sown for me. What I love about doing this work is by going to people, immediately you engage with your seldom heard voices and you start to capture insight and understand how things might need to look and feel a little bit different for it to be something that people want to engage with. Also, as well, for yourselves as counsellors, people might not know what you do as counsellors, what the town council does. It's a great way of putting information into people's hands. So I'm not looking about it, I don't know, but here you are. We can put information into people's hands about what you're doing. And also you can get a real good snapshot about the community that you want to reach. So you get a lot from doing something that's very, very quick. It's very immediate. It's a very efficient way of meeting lots of people quite fast. Next slide, please, Vicky. So here is a case study. A few weeks ago, I was working in quite a sort of a rural part of Cambridgeshire with librarians from across Cambridgeshire. And the particular library where we did our street outreach activity is in Papworth. So it is quite a rural area. There's lots of housing, but very little community infrastructure. If you want to go somewhere, people go by car. You don't really see that, many people kind of mingling and walking around. But there is kind of a very small hub or high street, or not even a high street really. It's just a street, but there's a car park, there's the doctor's surgery, there's a supermarket, there's one or two little shops. So for the library, they're aware that there's lots of people who are not coming to the library. So with them, we put together a pop-up event inviting people to drop in to the library, to come and have a coffee, just to come and see what's going on in the library for maybe people who've never been. So this was part of our training. So deliver the street outreach training, how to approach and engage people really well. And just in a couple of hours, we met and engaged 76 people in this quite kind of rural area, just by wandering around and being where people go and park their car, go to the doctors, go to the supermarket. We met 49 men and 49 men and 25 women. We've got an age demographic here. So we met people aged 18 to 30, we spoke to 11 women and 3 men. People aged 31 to 50, 19 women, 5 men. So you can kind of see we met a good cross-section of people. But what was really interesting, we didn't say to people, have you ever been to the library before? But because we were inviting people to this drop-in for a coffee at the library, lots of people volunteered their experience. So 21 people said, oh yeah, I go to the library, I know it. 5 people said, oh, I used to visit the library, but I don't anymore. And we met 10 people who'd never visited that library or any library. So immediately by going out and doing the street outreach, the librarians and the library staff were meeting a good cross-section of people and automatically getting this insight about who's visiting or not visiting a library in your community. And also 30 people of those 76 expressed an interest in coming along to that pop-up event, and 8 people just said, oh, can I take this invitation? Can I share this with somebody else? So it's a great way of kind of sparking that community action of people passing on your information. So it's just a little snapshot really of what street outreach can do.
Jo,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. So if you're not standing with a clipboard or you're doing 2 hours, say, right, let's all get together on a Saturday, 2 hours, and we'll have this conversation. How do you tally that information? So is it when they've walked off, you suddenly put on a clipboard behind your back, right? That was a man, he was aged this, how do you collate that without having a clipboard in your hand?
Excellent question there, Lucy. So I don't have clipboards at all because they signal to people that you're doing something. So I don't know if any of you have ever spent a day standing outside a supermarket or behind a table or at an event. The people you really want to meet just kind of sail past you because they don't make eye contact, they move away. Street outreach is different because I'm approaching people and engaging people. I haven't got clipboards or know, I'm not dressed officially, I've got no branded logos or t-shirts. If I'm promoting an opportunity, I'll just have the invitation and I'll stop and engage somebody and say, oh, sorry to bother you, I'm not fundraising or selling anything. We're just letting people know about this, inviting people along to this event, say in the library. After the conversation has gone, I've designed a very simple paper-based tool. You pick it out and then you tick, tick, tick. Who did I meet? What age group? Are they interested? Did I give information? Really super quick. And you might make 1 or 2 notes. But some people might have that in a notebook. I just have a piece of paper and I quickly get it out and rest on a book or something and do that. So it's very, very discreetly done. Because as soon as you, you know, even if you had like a tablet or a computer, other people will see you entering something and then it can change the nature of what you're doing. In terms of the data, great question there in the chat, Karen, is because you're not asking for any personal details at all, it counts as anonymous data. So no one could identify anybody from the data that you're collecting. So it means that you're able to collect it in that way. It's basically it's a tally of who you met and things that you could observe. And if somebody did ask you about it, then you know no one could identify them from that. And you'll see a bit more about the data when we look at the SOSAR. I would say generally there hasn't been a issue of trust because you're not asking those personal questions. So it is very much, you know, very, very informally done, and you're going to do it discreetly as well. So often I'll have a conversation and I'll go off to one side and my little ticking exercise is going to take me 30 seconds. It's very, very fast. And if somebody was to look at it, they're just going to see a lot of ticks and circles and things, no kind of person identified. So it's just about being kind of discreet, I think. But lots of great questions there. It's can feel really daunting, street outreach, but again, it's something as a good practice mentor I train and support and come out with people to do. And if you're interested in knowing more about the do's and don'ts and how it works, we've got another toolkit, so another resource that you can download and have a look about how to do that practically and what that looks like. So that's there as well in the slides. Great. So next slide, please, Vicky.
I think
Great.
it's my turn now, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Okay, so Joe and I have been working together using this approach for a while now. So we've kind of, I guess, brought our 2 areas of specialism, if you want to call them that, together to really help people to think about what it is that they want to get out of this particular approach in advance. So we've combined some steps so that people can come together and co-design what Joe was explaining about earlier, that piece of paper would be something that was co-designed and thought about collectively. It's not something that Joe would put together and just decide. So it's very much crafted to just gain the insights that you want to know, and also indicators, which is something that we go into in the training. They're the things that perhaps you find out through the conversations that you have, that you're not necessarily asking directly about, but it's just general information that you pick up along the way by having conversations in these more informal ways. So it's the nuggets, I guess, of things that you could find out or you might like to make note of. So this is how the approach actually works. So we basically go out together to where people are in your community using this approach to capture insight from the people that you wouldn't normally hear from. And by doing it in this way, it helps you to really understand the real barriers around engaging with people that you don't normally talk to, as well as finding insights out about their needs and what stops them from finding you or engaging with you. So as I said, the first step is to really review with us how this approach might fit with your needs. So it's very adaptable and flexible in that way. It's not just like this is how we churn it out, but the steps, you know, the actual in-person training and the approach itself is very structured in a particular way because it is a researched approach. So you'll get a tailored briefing document as well in advance to make sure that everybody understands why we're doing this and how it will work, have opportunity to ask questions. And obviously, if this is a very different way of going out and engaging with people, any kind of concerns or any questions that like just came up in the chat then. And then together we'll spend some time mapping out the plan on the day, where we would go, and crafting the informal questions that we would ask. And as Jo says, they're very much conversational questions. It's not like an interview or a questionnaire type question at all. And it's to really kind of then have time to go out and do that in practice. But first and foremost, you spend some time with Jo, really learning the skills, having a go, really getting everyone on the same page and making sure that, you know, everybody feels as comfortable and confident as possible before going out there. But the actual training itself, or the actual going out and trying it on the day, is about testing and learning. So it's getting the most out of that opportunity as it's presented, but also just, you know, just being mindful that it is actually an opportunity to go out and have a go. But I'm sure, as Jo will tell you in a minute, even having like a small amount of time to go out and try that, we still are able to speak to quite a few people and get a lot of information that you wouldn't normally get. And it's quite surprising every time we do this, when we then come back and review the data and the insights, and Jo will explain to you in a second how that works, just how surprised people are with the information that they've been able to gather that they wouldn't normally find out. And then there's the opportunity to come back and we can present that data and those insights with you and spend some time thinking about next steps and what you can now do with the insights and the information that you've got that you didn't know before. Anything you'd like to add to that, Jo?
No, I think that was a really great introduction, Vicky. And I think what I'm going to do next is to show you some of the end from the SOSO. So what came out of that, what data was captured, what does that data look like, and how you can use it. So I think if we've done this now with a whole range of organisations, bits of the NHS, councils, people looking for funding, and they've done this to kind of fill gaps, evidence, need and demand. So it's always very bespoke, and we always start by thinking, who are the people that you really want to reach and to meet? Where are they? And what is it that you want to understand from them? What are the gaps? What are the questions? And we use that then to shape the SOSAR activity that we're going to do. So what do those questions, what are those conversations going to look like in practice, and how we can collect the data? So
yeah, and absolutely, Lucy, we are there to support this process from start to finish. Yeah.
Yes, and the going out to have the conversations, I'm there doing it with you. So you've got that benefit of my in-person support too. So here's a case study. So this was with a council who were wanting to produce a new older people strategic needs assessment. As a starting point, they had done quite a lot of formal consultation through people connected to services. So they've got community connectors, sort of social prescribers, people accessing adult social care, people going along to community groups and organisations. So basically they wanted to understand more around kind of isolation, loneliness, what people wanted and what that might look like. So they'd done all that very formal consultation, but then they said, you know, well, we're speaking to the people who are already connected. What about everyone else? So together we shaped this SOSAR and we went out into the community. It was in and around kind of a marketplace. And we wanted to approach people and capture insight around social isolation and loneliness, who's engaging or not with formal services, and if people wanted to find out what there is, where do they look? So the training is very practice-based, and as part of the training, we go out and do some practical conversations, some SOSAR conversations. And we had an hour and a half of going out to do the practice together. We had 38 conversations. 52% older men, 48% older women. We met 3 carers on that day, including a man who'd left his wife in the car so he could run into the hairdressers and get a haircut, because it's the only way he could ever get anything done. 8 people we met that day shared something that indicated or expressed loneliness. So we're not saying to people, are you lonely or isolated? But I think because the nature of the conversations is not intrusive, it's very informal, very relaxed, people feel safe to share things with us. So 8 people expressed something that indicated loneliness. And somebody here had said, you know, well, I speak to rather than meet people. So people, my engagements are very surface level. 7 people indicated, expressed something about isolation. I don't go anywhere, don't see anybody, don't know anybody. There were 3 indicators of vulnerability. We met somebody who shared that they were transgender and they had to be really careful about who they spoke to and where they went. And we had 6 really special in-depth conversations where people shared quite a lot of insight about their lives. And during that, one man talked about how he'd been living without heating in his home for several months. So this is all from, we're approaching and engaging people and we're meeting them, and this is the kind of information we can capture. During that activity, 38% of people we met ended up just having some information put into their hands of things they could do, places they could go. And the next slide is sharing with you the difference between the insight captured out on the street and the insight captured from their formal consultation. So around social isolation, out on the street, 24% of people aren't doing anything. Their formal survey, it was only around 7% of their responders. Barriers to engagement, so this could be transport, it could be health, it could be all sorts of things. Out on the street, 70% of people shared something that indicated a barrier. 42% of people through the formal consultation didn't believe that there were any barriers at all. Who was engaging in a formal offer or service? Only 10% of people out on the street, in comparison to 65% of people who were taking part in one or more activities or services through the formal engagement. Where were people looking for information? Out on the street, 37% of people did not know where to look. And then there was a mix. So a few people might look online, a few people might look on a notice board, a few people might rely on word of mouth. And in the comparable sort of formal survey data, only 13% of people didn't know where they would find the information. But whenever we do SOSAR, we can think in advance about what do we want to capture? What do we want to notice? But because you're speaking to people that you don't meet in any other context ordinarily, then you learn a lot about their experience and their insight. So one of the key things that we learned doing this is this local market was actually a very important informal social hub. People go there to get out of the house, to go and physically be around people. It's just valuable. It's this informal social asset. This council learnt that the people they wanted to meet are not hard to find. They're just in that market, and they've since done some more street outreach engagement there. And also in the market, the council had got a stand where there's all kinds of flyers and information about what's going on. Nobody we spoke to had ever visited that stand, perhaps because it felt a bit too formal. None of that is for me. So the council said, well, instead of having people stuck behind a table, they could be out roaming around with the information, approaching and engaging people. So immediately it gives you a chance to learn how things might need to be done differently to be successful for those people. So I'll just show you now, the next slide is just to show you a snapshot of the data. So as Vicky was saying, is we have all the conversations during the SOSAR, we're ticking, we're making our notes all discreetly, and then I go away and I collate all your conversation data and show you how to analyse it. So this was from another organisation. It was in a coastal community where they wanted to engage with men. And this was to support a funding application where they knew there were lots of men in this particular area with lots of health inequalities, on low income, loneliness, isolation. We want to try and do something about it. We want to target an intervention, but how do we know it's what they need? So here are some examples of the questions we asked. So instead of asking people about what groups and activities do you go to, what's your hobbies and interests, because people go, none of that's for me. We asked people about how do you spend your leisure time, and 16 men responded to this. So we've got 5 people saying I don't do much or anything, 2 middle-aged men, 2 younger people. A middle-aged man said, I spend all my time at home. Few people were walking just to get out of the house. And there was a whole mixture of different things. So you can see from this analysis that the data you get from all those informal conversations is incredibly detailed. Anything that they would like to do, quite a lot of people said yes, but they didn't know what that could be because they're not people engaging with formal groups and activities, and what would help them to do it. And again, because people don't necessarily know what's possible, it reveals that people weren't sure. But again, it's really useful to get this kind of snapshot very quickly of people that you're not meeting in another setting. And the next slide, please. Yeah, so the other thing that you can do and how you can use this data is all the data is anonymous, so you can use it to create informal case studies. And I think what's interesting is often we produce a case study about somebody who's embedded in a service, about their experience, about how they got here. Whereas with SOSAR, you're speaking to people who haven't gone on that journey. So the people around there are not engaging. And again, you can use that, I think, to evidence need, to help fill in gaps, to kind of share that insight. So here's an example. So X is a 64-year-old man. We only know this because he said, oh, I'm 64. So he volunteered that information. He was met and engaged with his friend on the moor in Sheffield. And he said, oh, we've been coming here into the city centre since we were kids. We've been friends all that time. When X and his friend meet up in Sheffield, they like to go for a walk, they visit the Peace Garden and maybe have a coffee. He might like to do other things in the city centre, but he doesn't know what there is. He talked about needing to be more police and the city centre feels less safe than it used to. X is not online and not sure where to look for information from the council or things about things going on in the city. He would find it useful if information was displayed in the city centre. So it just kind of gives you another kind of case study for the people who aren't engaged. So I'll hand back over to Vicky, and then we can talk a bit more about the whole SOSAR approach and your questions. Oh, sorry, Vicky, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, I've noticed there are questions in the chat that have started to form, so we can come back to those at the end, can't we? Absolutely. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about community asset mapping first. Now, the community asset map is part of the SOSAR approach in that we get together to kind of map the bump-in spaces and places that we might find the people that we would like to reach and speak with. But we also spend a bit of time deciding who those people are and who we're not currently meeting and engaging with outside of our usual interactions. But we also look at the community asset map in a much kind of wider context as well. So we can still go through those particular steps of identifying the people that you want to reach and find and engage with, and the barriers that are stopping you from doing that. So we've kind of touched on that today, but this will be going in much deeper. So this is really looking at all the different barriers that might come up, and how we can start to get around those barriers by thinking about the people that we want to meet and where we might engage with them in more formal and informal ways. So we're kind of thinking that, you know, both of these approaches are important, the formal and the informal, but obviously we're trying to open up and widen our opportunities to have those more informal interactions alongside the formal. But what's working in terms of our formal, and how can we widen up our formal engagement as well in a way that enables us to have more meaningful interactions that we're really gaining some great insights from. And then we can look at the kind of informal side of the engagement and really identify all of the bumping spaces where people are moving around in their lives, where they're walking around, where they're catching the bus, where they're going and doing their daily day-to-day activities or tasks, or the touch points that they need to make, whether that's the doctor's surgery, whether that's you know, they go into some sort of community interaction in other ways as well. So it's really thinking about how your community is mapped, and then how you can meet and engage with the people on their terms. So you're kind of turning it around from that way of thinking about people coming to you for information and to ask questions and to find things out. Anything you'd like to add on the community asset mapping, Jo?
I think the only thing to say, to reiterate what I think I mentioned earlier in the first Menti, is often we try and approach everybody at once, reach everybody at once, and that's such a big ask. And I think doing these kind of activities can help you prioritize. So there might be a specific group or, you know, demographic within your community, and you think, you know, or you're doing a piece of work and you think, do you know what, we really want to hear from younger people about this, or we want to hear from people in this area of our town. So it really helps you to focus in on that, and then you can go out and get that snapshot. So it's only ever going to be a snapshot. I mean, you could go out and have hundreds of conversations and you're going to learn things, but it just can illuminate things from the side and the point of view of the people that you're not meeting. So I think as an outreacher, doesn't matter what I'm doing, I always go through this process because I need to spend my time really well, and I want to engage the people that aren't connected to things. So I need to really target where I go and how I do that.
Yeah, and it's making the most of the opportunities, isn't it, that are available to us, for sure. Thank you, Jo. So I was going to do this on Menti, but I think because of time, we'll just leave this open as a couple of prompts for you to kind of consider. Obviously, having heard what you've heard today, how that's landed for you, anything that's kind of stood out for you in particular today, anything that's kind of helped you to think about how you might do things differently moving forward, or anything particular in your area of work that you feel that you might need some more support with potentially to help you get to where you would like to get to. So I shall just open those questions up. I'll share them in the chat as well. And then I'll make sure that we come to the questions that are already in the chat before we close. Bear with me 1 second. I'll just open up the floor. Or you might have your own sort of questions or insights as well, just to help you think.
Am I okay to ask the question? Sorry.
Go for it.
Yeah. I was just wondering whether there's any research support if you're targeting specific groups. So I don't know, you want opinions of females or males or younger people, whether there's any evidence to suggest that if you're targeting that groups, there's better engagement with people in that group. So for example, if you wanted to understand young people's opinions, whether younger people asking those questions, getting involved, you'd be better targeting. And again, if you were focusing on women, it would be better women going in to ask those questions. So if that
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think the most important thing is the skills and the approach. So if somebody's got the right skills to approach and engage people in conversation, that is the most important thing. So certainly as an outreach worker, I've engaged people of all different ages and communities, and I've trained and supported a whole host of people to do this. And I think you can get bogged down and go, oh, well, we must have a man to go out and speak to men, otherwise it won't work. Or recently, a few weeks ago, I was doing some social with a bit of the NHS, and it was around take up of cancer screening in an area where people didn't take it up, lots of issues and barriers. And there was a member of staff who had the training and came out, and he was talking to lots of women and things. So and vice versa. So I think the reality is it's thinking about who you've got to do this and giving them the right skills and support to do it. I think the only exception sometimes can be is if there's a specific community, it can be really beneficial, if possible, to have somebody from that particular community to do it. But if you haven't, then there's always workarounds. I've had great conversations with things like Google Translate. It's about how you make people feel and the informality of it. So it's not an opportunity to ask a questionnaire. You're not asking personal questions. You're not asking for your date of birth or your address or your postcode or any of those things that you would do as part of a formal survey. And what's good about it as well is it's up to the individuals you approach if they want to engage with you and what they choose to share. So you can say, it's to help the NHS or it's to help the council, and then people can decide. So it's how you make people feel is the thing that's most successful about it, rather than who's doing it.
I think I just so we were trying to set up a youth council, and we went to the local youth centre, and I was really conscious of there was, I think, 3 counsellors going in, and it just didn't feel, it wasn't a good setting maybe to encourage their participation. Maybe they just felt like we were intruding on their session. But I'm very aware. So I'm a psychologist, and I don't work with children. It's not I've always worked with adults, so I am very conscious, I suppose, of the language, and I have children myself. But I don't know, I suppose in that setting we did have a younger counsellor who came, but I don't know whether having some older counsellors, whether we were kind of intruding. I don't know. The dynamics certainly didn't set. I mean, I feel like I know how to communicate.
Yes.
But it still didn't feel, even though I was really conscious of the clothes that I was wearing and the language that I was using, it just didn't really feel like it worked well at all.
No,
and that's what I wasn't sure whether there was.
I think as well, we can often overthink things and we project what we think onto people. So I've certainly been out with people who've not approached individuals because I don't feel comfortable or they won't want to talk to me. So there's a hurdle to get over, and I think it's for me it's always been a switch between going, I'm bothering people, or they won't be interested, or they won't talk to me, to going, I'm giving everybody an opportunity. I'm not deciding for them, and that not deciding, it's up to that person to decide. And if somebody feels like you're not doing it right, they will tell you, and then it means I can reflect and I can adapt. But it is a tough one, I think, Claire.
Yeah, I just wanted to add as well, because I'm just conscious of time with my co-production hat on, in terms of involvement, involving people. I think it is really important to think about, that from a sort of peer-to-peer perspective as well. And certainly, when we've done like co-evaluation in the past as part of the Aging Better programme, we've found that it has been more insightful to get more information from people if you're kind of doing it in a in a peer-to-peer way. So I think it depends on the context and what it is that you're trying to do, and the setting that you're in as well. Very much makes a difference. Sorry, Lucy, you were going to.
No, it's fine, Claire. Just wondering whereabouts you're based. If it's worth me touching base with you at some point, because there may be some youth provision that actually, whether you're rural or town, because there may be a wider youth provision that actually are set to for, you know, they're funded to also support the rural communities. So there may be worth linking in with them if they've got specialists that work in that sort of with young people.
I'm in Whittle, so if you're Worcester,
There you go.
Yeah, so I can have a look into that, Claire, if if that would be helpful.
And that's part of tapping into your assets and resources, isn't it? Because it's been able to kind of look at who else is available. It might not be right in your community, but from other communities that you can kind of link with. We've got just 2 minutes left. So Karen, I know that you've got something you wanted to add as well. And thank you for your comments around what you found most useful in the session. And I'm also conscious you've got a question that you wanted to ask as well, that I just wanted to make sure Jo could answer for you.
Well, less about that. From my experience, I've done a lot of work with people with very serious mental health issues. And often the experience has been as people have been dismissed and not listened to. And actually they want their voice represented. So I would just kind of challenge this. It's all discreet and anonymous, and we're just getting this general information. I understand that at a population level, but I think there are certain groups where the power dynamic has been so problematic for them. That includes particular groups, people with disabilities, maybe the trans person that you talked about as well, women certainly, you know, survivors of domestic violence. That actually, I think we need to weave our way through this concept of people are kind of just coming forward because they have got all these barriers, that actually sometimes people really want to be heard.
Definitely.
Aaron, can I come in there, because we absolutely endorse that, and would definitely be on the same page as that in terms of the co-production and the working with approach. That is absolutely the way that we would work, and it is all about making sure that the voice of the individual can be heard in the right way for them. So it's been led by them and not by the professionals or whoever is facilitating those interactions. So yeah, absolutely agree with what you're saying there. And I don't think we're saying that isn't important to be considered. We're just kind of looking at this particular approach and how this works in an outreach setting. I don't know, Jo, if you want to.
Yeah, I think it's very democratic, because you're just going to approach anybody who could be within your target age group or your area. So you're going to meet a real cross section of people, and some people will decide to share things, like the transgender person who was sharing their experience. And again, I think certainly doing this work, I've met lots of people who've talked about things like their mental health, or people who've been in prison, or all sorts of things people choose to share with me in these encounters. But often, again, they're the people who would not be in that formal group or that setting, the people who would are not formally seeking help or support because they've got barriers and things around it. So I think it's not just one approach. This is just another way.
Yeah. And it's their choice, isn't it, to disclose?
Yeah, it's their choice. Yeah.
John,
can I just ask? I can appreciate that sort of recording a live session of this kind of interaction could be problematic, but have you tried either acting or role playing it to give us some sort of idea? People like myself who feel well on the outside of the possibility of doing this, some sort of feel for it.
Yeah, I mean, we do role play it in the training, if you like, if you want to call it that. We practice it and actually.
All right. Do you have videos of that?
That would be part of the process, John.
Do you have videos of that can be shared?
Oh, do we video it? No, we don't video it, do we?
No, I think
No.
it's very difficult because even in the role play, it's not naturalistic. It's people practicing what they're going to say, how they're going to ask questions, and people never respond in the way that people do in the real world. But
Well,
I
one alternative would be, of course, is to reenact an encounter for the cameras.
It's an interesting idea. We will take that forward, John. Thank you for
Okay,
for
no problem.
suggesting that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a point was we could put that as part of our information and our briefing as well, potentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Because I think
you.
it'd be good for someone like me who it feels quite daunted by the
Yes, I
prospect
understand what you're saying.
to see someone actually doing it. And I
Yeah,
appreciate you can't record, you can't film someone when you're doing an informal thing. Whether you can record it, just the audio,
the
and then
approach.
reenact it, I think that could be quite an interesting possibility for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Thank you, John.
And for me as well. It's okay.
We have run out of time, but we're happy to hang on for a few minutes longer if people have got questions, by all means, and we'll follow up with anything that we haven't already addressed.
Well, thank you very much. It's been good food for thought. We're only just at our almost preconception, I suppose, of what we're going to be doing, and this just gives us some sort of idea of the routes we could go down.
Yeah.
But one of the problems in a rural setting with very few interaction points within the village is how do you capture them? Because there aren't meeting places particularly. It's a commuter village, so people come in, sleep, go out, work.
Yeah. We've got lots of follow-up sessions that you are very much invited to address those particular challenges. So we do run sessions around the stepping stone approach to engagement, which Joe leads on, and also Joe and I work together to look at barriers to engagement in more rural and dispersed areas as well. So there is follow-on that you could possibly connect with us on if that feels like something that you will benefit from.
Well, we're at the stage of formulating our programme over the next 6 months to review the parish council and what its purpose is and where it's going to go. So yeah, it'd be useful to contemplate that.
Going to say, John, in those kind of rural settings where it's just housing and nothing else, having the right comms to put through people's letterboxes gets information to people, and I also train and support people around door knocking as well. So there's a whole kind of range of things from the least intensive to the most intensive that we can support people to explore.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my phone's gone.
Oh, that's okay.
No problem. It's great to meet you. Thank you for those of you that
thanks very much.
That have stayed on a little bit longer.
Thank you both again. Just everybody goes away from these sessions with lots of things in their minds of, you know, what to think about, just a different approach. And just, it's not about replacing the formal sessions,
No.
you know, the formal engagement. It's just an alternative to find the views of those that don't normally fill in the questionnaires. So it's just to give that alternative approach. So thank you again. Lots to think about.
Pleasure.
Not at all. You're very welcome. Shall we stop recording there, Joe?